Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the 24th lecture of Rest in Belief. In our previous lectures 22 and 23, we confirmed the final scene of the Samaritan dispensation. A single trumpet sound divided the two churches of Corinth and Thessalonica into different destinies, and we witnessed the process of those divided destinies being finalized by the verdict of the heavenly court. Starting today with Lecture 24, we enter the climax of this series, the heart of grace, which is the completion of the pure Gentile church. However, before entering that heart, we must first absolutely remember a single chain that was binding Paul. Throughout Paul's long missionary journey beginning in Acts 13, in Antioch, in Pisidia, in Iconium, in Thessalonica, and in Corinth, even though he was clearly the apostle to the Gentiles, he always sought out the synagogue of the Jews first whenever he arrived in a new city. They came to Antioch in Pisidia and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. Acts 13:14. And it came to pass in Iconium that they went both together into the synagogue of the Jews, and so spake. Acts 14:1. They came to Thessalonica, where was a synagogue of the Jews, and Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them. Acts 17:1-2. And he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath, and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks. Acts 18:4. There was only one reason Paul acted and recorded it this way. It was because of a single rule specified in Romans 1:16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Therefore the Gentiles at that time had no choice but to remain in a subordinate position, feeding on the spiritual crumbs of the Jews, unable to access salvation without being grafted into the natural branch called the Jew. This also meant that if all Jews rejected the gospel to the very end, the Gentiles could never be saved. Then if the Gentiles wanted to individually believe the gospel and be saved, and if the believing Gentiles were to enter directly into God's grace without the Jews, what had to precede this? It was the complete demolition of the massive establishment barrier called Israel, which held the priority of salvation in the middle. However, the righteous God desired to show undeniable evidence that everyone would be forced to accept that the Jews had kicked salvation away with their own feet in order to strip Israel of its spiritual privileges and remove them from the stage of history, no matter how persistently they rejected the gospel. Everyone, do you remember the principle of the Jewish court? At the mouth of two witnesses, or at the mouth of three witnesses, shall the matter be established. Deuteronomy 19:15. God never issued the final verdict upon Israel on a whim. Based on the law, he only finalized it after making a progressive declaration 3 times to Israel through the mouth of the Apostle Paul. The scene of the first testimony for that final verdict was Antioch in Pisidia. When the Jews rejected the word, Paul and Barnabas declared this: "It was necessary that the word of God should first have been spoken to you, but seeing ye put it from you, and judge yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, lo, we turn to the Gentiles." Acts 13:46. And the scene of the second testimony was Corinth. "Your blood be upon your own heads, I am clean. From henceforth I will go unto the Gentiles." Acts 18:6. Here too, the Jews still rejected the gospel. Yet even after this second declaration, God did not immediately cast them away, leaving room for restoration, desiring that the final witness would not have to appear. Thus, Paul still sought out the synagogues of the Jews first even after that. However, the Jews remained stubborn and even tried to kill Paul, the apostle. Finally, reaching chapter 28, the last chapter of Acts, God sets the stage for the final, third testimony. And for that testimony, he placed this faithful apostle to the Gentiles into a Roman prison, ensuring he could no longer move to the synagogues of the Jews. And here the prophecy of Isaiah prophesied in the Old Testament is fulfilled through Paul's mouth. Tragically, this was the brand of an irreversible verdict, saying, "Go unto this people, and say, hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and not perceive. For the heart of this people is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes have they closed." lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and should be converted and I should heal them. Acts 28:26-27. And immediately the merciless final sentence is delivered to them. Be it known therefore unto you that the salvation of God is sent unto the Gentiles, and that they will hear it. Acts 28:28. A terrifying severance completely shutting the door on a nation. This was the beginning of the curse upon Israel that fell in Acts 28:28. After this sentence, a scene where Paul seeks out a synagogue of the Jews on his own feet during his missions never appears even once in the Bible again. Furthermore, from this point on, Paul, the apostle who used to raise the dead, could no longer perform any spiritual gifts or miracles. As a result, he had to leave his own co-worker behind, unable to heal his sickness. But Trophimus have I left at Miletum sick. 2 Timothy 4:20. Drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake and thine often infirmities. 1 Timothy 5:23. These circumstances following this sentence show that the era of the Jews, who required miracles and signs, was completely terminated and discarded by the Bible. The era of signs demanded by the Jews was over. Afterward, inside the prison, Paul receives the highest purity of revelation, different from before. And finally, the great mystery, which had been hidden deep within God since before the foundation of the world, reveals its brilliant reality to the world through Paul's prison epistles. At last, the era directed toward pure Gentiles, a new creation not grafted into the Jews, had begun, which in other ages was not made known unto the sons of men, as it is now revealed unto his holy apostles and prophets by the Spirit. Ephesians 3:5. Then upon the empty stage where Israel has exited, what is the true identity of that great mystery? Paul began to pour out through his prison epistles. In our next session, Lecture 25, I will guide you into the heart of the highest purity of grace that completely evaporates the dregs of the law. Rest in belief, establishing the framework of the ages. Do not miss the next lecture. Thank you.